Getting a negative 14 in Wii Sports Resort Golf is by no means an amazing achievement. As a matter of fact, it's still 4 strokes short of the Ace of Clubs achievement in the game. However, for me, it represents one of the most difficult things I've ever tried to do in my entire history as a streamer. Here's how I did it. Get in there. Oh! Nice. Oh, we ended with a birdie. Look at that. And with that, we have a new personal best at 18 holes on Wii Sports Resort at negative 13. Look at that. Look at that. If I would have known how long that negative 13 personal best was going to stand, I probably would have celebrated a little bit more. Wii Sports Resort Golf has quickly become one of the most frustrating and fun games that I have ever actually played on my channel or otherwise. I was originally inspired to dust off my Wii and start playing it because of Summoning Salt's video on the subject, and I eventually would like to start speedrunning it. However, before I can do that, I've made it my personal mission to get every single achievement in the game. The last achievement I have yet to get is the Ace of Clubs achievement, which is scoring a negative 18 for 18 holes. That means getting a birdie on every single hole. But before I could attempt that, I would have to at least beat my personal best of negative 13, and that means getting a negative 14 or better. To start though, let's take a look at that negative 13 run. Hole 1 on the original PB was pretty uneventful. A nice drive into the fairway, a decent chip shot that almost went in, and then a putt for birdie. Hole 2 was a little bit more eventful. The first shot almost went straight into the hole. This was then followed up by a pretty easy birdie putt. Hole 3 is a par 5, which means that you need good wind and a decent amount of luck in my case in order to hope for an eagle. On this hole, I had 0 wind, which means that I was able to go ahead and just pick up the birdie. Hole 4 is my least favorite par 3 in the game. It's pretty difficult to get your ball to stick on the green if you club up, and unless you've got really good wind, it's hard to get it close to the hole. So I was only able to hit it in for a par. Hole 5 is once again a par 5. That means that you need really good wind in order to hope for an eagle. I happened to have really bad wind, which meant that I was able to get it on the green in 3 shots, and then, get it in for birdie. Hole 6 is my least favorite hole in the entire course. It has a sloping green that slopes away from the direction that you're always hitting, which makes it very difficult in order to birdie the hole. Here's what happened. With a decent drive, and then a decent approach shot, I ended up on the green in 2 shots, with a more or less makeable putt for birdie. However, unfortunately, I would have to settle for a par. Man, I really hate this hole. Ugh. I overhit a little bit on hole 7, but that's okay because my strategy at the time was to actually hit the tree and then drop into the rough or fairway. I was then able to get a pretty decent chip shot up onto the green, and then was able to putt it in for the birdie. Hole 8 started out rough, with me hitting it pretty far to the left and into the fairway off of the green. But then, this happened. Yeah!
Nice chip for birdie.
F*** you, Maximilian! A perfect chip shot out of the fairway, when one of my now former moderators, Xamillion, had been doubting me all day. Needless to say, it was a pretty good moment. Hole 9 is probably my second least favorite hole in the entire game. It's pretty difficult to birdie and has a weirdly sloped green where the ball literally will just not stop rolling. But in the end, I missed a decent chance at a birdie putt and then ended up with a par. On to the back 9. I was going into the back 9 with a -6. That meant that almost for sure, as long as I didn't flub anything up, I was going to PB. Hole 10 went pretty normally, but I may have overestimated the slope of the green and missed the putt for birdie, so I ended up with a par. Hole 11 was another extremely close shot to the hole, as well as an unmissable birdie. Hole 12 has this small patch of grass that requires quite a bit of precision to get onto correctly. Hit it too hard and you'll end up out of bounds, hit it too soft and you'll also be out of bounds. I managed to get it on the island, then get a great shot onto the green, and then get a really easy shot for an eagle. Hole 13 was another really great shot directly onto the green very close to the hole, followed by another unmissable birdie putt. At this point, I was starting to feel pretty invincible, but the next hole will show you that that was not the case. Straight into the water on hole 14. Not to be deterred, I was still able to hit it up into the bunker close to the green, chip it on, and then putt it in for par. I was still on pace to get my personal best. Hole 15 was pretty average, a decent drive onto the fairway, and then a decent chip onto the green. However, this putt was going to be pretty hard to make. But I sank it anyway. On hole 16, you can take a shortcut to the right through the trees in order to hopefully try and either get on the green or in a bunker that puts you very close to the green. This is still a risky maneuver for me, but in my former personal best of -13, I went for it. It was then just a matter of an easy chip onto the green and then a putt in for birdie. Hole 17 is a long par 3, so it was simple as one approach shot with a 3-wood, a simple chip onto the green, and then a putt in for par. I went into hole 18 with 0 wind, which meant that it wasn't too off for me to suggest.
What if we ended with an albatross? How insane would that be?
Foreshadowing at its finest. After this, I proceeded to get a decent shot up onto the green, missed the putt for eagle, but was able to get it in for birdie, solidifying my -13 personal best.
And with that, we have a new personal best at 18 holes on Wii Sports Resort at -13. Look at that. Look at that.
This is going to be blatantly obvious to anyone who speedruns or goes for score runs in Wii Sports Resort Golf, but that -13 was far from perfect. I had to settle for a par on hole 4 and hole 10. I also hit it into the water on hole 14. But the one thing that I was able to hit on this run that I haven't been able to hit on any run since was the shortcut on hole 16. After that original -13, it would take me 1 month, 2 weeks, and 4 days in order to actually beat it. The number one thing that held me back from getting another personal best was ultimately my own pride. But let's take a look at one of my failed runs so you can truly see that on display. Hole 1 was once again fairly standard. A decent hit onto the fairway, a less than ideal chip onto the green, and then a pretty long putt for birdie. Hole 2 was also fairly bog standard. A nice hit onto the green, and then a pretty easy putt for birdie. Hole 3 this time actually had halfway decent wind for me, but unfortunately I ended up in the bunker on my second shot instead of on the green. I was almost able to hit it in for eagle, but I ended up having to settle for a birdie. This time on hole 4, I actually was able to get a pretty good lie on the green, and then was able to go ahead and putt it in for birdie. Hole 5 started off with me bouncing off of the tree instead of ending up further up on the fairway, and I was still able to get a decent shot pretty close to the green, and then a pretty decent chip onto the green. Unfortunately, I ended up missing the birdie putt, which meant that I was going to have to settle for a par. Hole 6 started out halfway decent with me in the fairway. I then decided to use a wood to avoid hitting the tree, which meant that I way overshot, so then once again, I would have to settle for a par on hole 6. On hole 7, I was still using the strategy of hitting the tree. I was then able to get a less than ideal chip up onto the green, but I was able to sink this pretty long putt for birdie. Hole 8 was once again pretty average. A direct hit onto the green, and then a nice putt for birdie. Hole 9 started off pretty standard, with a nice drive, a pretty decent layup into the rough, and then I tried using driver strats once again, which didn't really work out. Almost made a really nice chip shot out of the bunker for birdie, but I ended up with a par. Hole 10 started off with a decent drive into the fairway, and then a decent hit onto the green, and then once again a really long putt, but this time I made it for birdie. Hole 11 started with a bad lie on the green, which meant that it would be a pretty hard curved putt for birdie, but I managed to sink it and celebrated accordingly. On hole 12, I once again was able to get it into the grass island, then get an amazing shot onto the green, and then go ahead and get a great shot in for an eagle. On hole 13, I was able to end up with a really great lie right next to the hole, and I was able to pick up the birdie extremely easily. On hole 14, I ended up in the rough after bouncing off a tree on my first shot. But then, using driver strats again, I was able to get really close to the hole. And then, I was able to sink a pretty hard putt for an eagle. I celebrated a little bit too hard. After a standard shot into the fairway, I had this crazy approach on hole 15 that went off the pin. Unfortunately, I missed the birdie putt, so I would just have to end up with a par. Remember earlier when I said that I still have yet to hit the shortcut on hole 16 again? Well, I was going into hole 16 on this run at -13, tied with my personal best. I still had 3 potentials for a birdie left, hole 16, 17, and 18. So pretty much no matter what I did here, I was going to get my personal best. However, because of my own arrogance and because I had been playing well that day, I decided to try for the shortcut.
No!
Nice shot.
Oh no!
Solid shot.
Or not. Wow. Have you ever seen someone fall apart so hard?
I missed the shortcut 3 times in a row. Only on the 4th try did I finally get on the green, and then I actually did manage to putt it in, but I ended up with a score of +5. My personal best would unfortunately just have to wait for another day. But, luckily, that day actually did eventually come. By this point, I was a lot more comfortable with Wii Sports Resort Golf, and holes 1 and 2 were pretty much completely guaranteed birdies for me. So, on holes 1 and 2, I got birdies. This time on hole 3, I had really good wind, and I aimed straight for the green instead of at the bunker, which meant I ended up on the green, and then I was able to go ahead and make a long putt for an eagle. This time, hole 4 was pretty kind to me. I managed to get a great lie and then go ahead and putt it in for a birdie. On hole 5, I also got amazing wind, which was super exciting because that meant that I had potential for an eagle. I managed to get it on the green right next to the hole and then go ahead and putt it in.
Yeah!
By this point, the pressure was kind of getting to me. I only got a par on hole 6, hole 7, hole 8, and hole 9. However, this did mean that I was going into the back 9 with a -7, and it was putting me perfectly on pace to get my personal best. At this point, once again, I had played a lot of Wii Sports Resort Golf, so I had gotten quite a bit better. So it was pretty easy for me to go ahead and pick up a birdie on hole 1, and then get a really nice shot into the green on hole 2, and go ahead and putt that in for birdie. On hole 3, my entire run almost ended with this absolute butt clencher of a shot. But I still managed to get it into the bunker, then get it onto the green, and then pick up the butt clencher of a birdie. Hole 13 is probably the most exciting hole in this run. Managed to get a great bounce off the flag, and get a hole-in-one.
What? What? What?
I was going into hole 14 with a -12, the biggest lead that I had ever had. Unfortunately, my first shot ended up hitting a tree and put me in the rough, but after a good recovery shot and a great chip onto the green, I was able to go ahead and putt it in for another birdie. Hole 15 didn't quite go to plan. I ended up in the rough on my first shot, which meant that I needed to make an approach shot. Then I managed to miss a pretty long putt for the birdie, so I was only able to end up with a par. I was now headed into hole 16 with a -13 once again, perfectly on pace to get my personal best. But this time, I decided to not take the shortcut. I managed to get a pretty nice drive, and then a very decent approach. However, I did overcompensate for the slope of the green, which meant that I would have to end up with a par. All I needed at this point was a par on hole 17, and then a birdie on hole 18. Both of which were very achievable and, well, shit.
No!
I overhit on hole 17, which ended up putting me in the water, which meant that if I wanted a personal best, I would need to eagle hole 18. Precision was going to be key here. I needed to be dialed in and completely focused. Luckily, I had the right wind conditions in order to be able to eagle the hole. But that's not exactly what happened. Remember earlier when I said,
What if we ended with an albatross? How insane would that be?
well, I was about to get my wish.
No way! No way! What is this game? We did it! Yes! I can't believe it, we did it! What the heck was that last shot?
I know that a -15 for 18 holes is really not that impressive. But for me, it felt like I had just set a world record. I am far from done though. I have decided to start speedrunning the game even though I'm still seeking my -18. And I do those runs on my Twitch channel, link in the description below. It would be awesome to have you guys tune in for some of my attempts, and I do just want to say, thank you so much for watching. You guys are all amazing, and straight up, I couldn't have done this without the support of the Little Cube Army. You guys are absolutely awesome, and I couldn't ask for a better community. If you're new here and you did manage to get to the end of the video, I would really appreciate a like, and if you like what you see, maybe consider subscribing. This is my very first time actually going through and editing a video, as well as recording voiceover over that video. So, I would really appreciate a like if you did enjoy it. And on that note, remember once again, if you liked the video, slap a like on it. If you didn't like the video, your opinion's invalid, and you can go f*** yourself. Have a good night, everybody.